Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. And now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On digital radio, I'm Nana Akua. For the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, I hope you can hear me, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Epic, and also comedian Leo Kers. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thanks very much indeed. The latest top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister is to visit Northern Ireland on Monday amid a political standoff at Stormont. That comes after the Democratic Unionist Party blocked the election of an Assembly Speaker yesterday, preventing a new executive from forming. The move was a protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is designed to ensure free trade can continue across the land border. The DUP, though, says it's not working and puts peace in the country at risk. Party leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson told GB News at the heart of the Good Friday Agreement is consensus, and not a single recently elected unionist agrees on the protocol.
It is harming our economy, it is undermining political stability, it actually contravenes the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement, because at the heart of that agreement is there shall be no change to the constitutional status of Northern Ireland without the consent of its people, and yet there has been no consent given for this protocol. And so if we're to restore power sharing on the basis of consent or consensus in Northern Ireland, then the protocol needs to be dealt with. And I've been calling on the government to take decisive action in the absence of agreement with the EU to remove the Irish sea border.
Well, that's a unionist position. The Sinn Féin president, Mary Lou McDonald, says the Prime Minister is using Ireland as part of a negotiating tactic with the EU.
Boris Johnson can't play games with the people of the North or with the island of Ireland. He has connived with the DUP to use Ireland, to use the North of Ireland, to use unionism in Ireland as a pawn in a wider game that is being played out with the European Union. And that is clearly a shameful tactic and approach, and it's one that is absolutely not acceptable.
Well, in other news today, Boris Johnson has revealed the first 50 migrants have been told they'll be sent to Rwanda within the next 2 weeks. In an interview with the Daily Mail newspaper, the Prime Minister said he's ready for a fight with what he's calling lefty lawyers who'll seek to challenge the government's plans to push asylum applications offshore. He also renewed calls for workers to return to the office, saying working from home doesn't work and staff are more productive when they're in the workplace. Finland's president has spoken to his Russian counterpart about his country's plan to join NATO. President Sauli Niinisto says the phone conversation with Vladimir Putin was direct and without aggravation. The Kremlin says the president of Russia, President Putin, told Finland abandoning its neutrality and joining NATO would be a mistake. 2 new cases of monkeypox have been confirmed in England. One person is being treated at the infectious diseases unit at St Mary's Hospital in London, and health officials say the other patient who'd lived with them is isolating but doesn't need care. They're not linked to a previous case identified earlier this month. Close contacts are now being notified as a precautionary measure. A 41-year-old woman and 3 dogs have been killed by a car in West London. Officers were called to a street in Chelsea this morning. The Met Police says a 26-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. The podcast host, Deborah James, has thanked people across the UK for all the donations received for cancer research and says it's been a surreal and humbling 5 days. Prince William visited the 40-year-old known as Bowel Babe to present her with a damehood after she raised almost £5.8 million. She launched the Just Giving fundraiser earlier this week when she revealed she was receiving end-of-life care. Now, the government has cut ties with the National Union of Students following allegations of anti-Semitism. The university's minister has ordered the NUS to be removed from all Department for Education groups and replaced with alternative representation. Michelle Donnellan is calling for other education bodies to take similar action and withdraw government funding. Well, you know what day it is? There's high hopes for Sam Ryder, who'll be representing the UK in tonight's Eurovision final. The 32-year-old TikTok star is one of 25 acts competing for the top prize at the event in Turin in Italy. He's going to be performing his pop song Spaceman. And the reason I was laughing is Lembit Opik in the background, right behind my camera, was cheering like mad as I was reading that story out. No doubt there'll be more on that in Nana's programme coming up. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Now here's Nana Akua.
So good afternoon. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Boris has blamed being too fat as the reason he was so seriously ill with COVID. And to be fair, we know that being obese increases your chances of a less favourable outcome. He could probably blame himself for catching the virus in the first place, though, when he shook hands with the people who had COVID, even though he was advised not to. The government urged us to see the pandemic as a wake-up call. So they came up with a strategy to help us lose weight. The strategy, wait for it, a ban on buy one, get one free junk food TV ads before 9 p.m. I want to laugh out loud. Really? Is that the best they could come up with? Who was the mastermind behind this harebrained scheme? They clearly see us as the masses, too stupid by half and easily influenced by an advert on TV, as though they thought that after seeing one like that, we would spontaneously run to the shop or order such a thing online, that we would take leave of our senses, have no control and just buy anything because you can get two for the price of one. Although we do swallow a lot of nonsense from our politicians, so I can see why they thought that they'd give this ludicrous idea a try. Banning junk food TV adverts before 9 p.m. makes no sense whatsoever. A, because if they stepped into the modern world, they'd realise that many people don't even turn on the TV. B, the internet has way more influence and they'll have no joy trying to police that. And C, it's none of their business. So because there's a cost of living crisis, Boris Johnson is now delaying the rollout of this silly idea, not because it's silly or because it's pointless, but because of the cost of living crisis. It's just one in a long line of silly ideas. Look, if you're serious about the cost of living and want to stay in power, put a windfall tax on the energy companies. They'll be fine. They've said as much. I'd even go further and windfall tax the supermarkets and delivery companies like Just Eat and Deliveroo, who benefited directly from your stay-at-home policies during the pandemic, and part of the reason why we're in this mess in the first place. Why is the taxpayer the first to be taxed? The British public are struggling to make ends meet, and anything that makes life a bit easier to afford and digest is a good thing. And people buy food to survive, and yes, people eat too much of it, but it is their freedom to choose. Instead of focusing on small measures like deals that might be a benefit to those who take advantage, how about focusing on the big boys? You and your harebrained schemes can just bog off. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. In my difficult conversation at 5 o'clock, as it's Mental Health Awareness Week, I'll be speaking to an inspirational campaigner. Ben West has been on a mission to get us all talking more about mental health, and amongst his supporters, the likes of Prince William and the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? Finland adopted neutrality after its defeat by the Soviet Union in World War II. And while Sweden has not been part of any military alliances for more than 200 years. But there has been a surge in public support for both countries for NATO membership following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russia said it will be forced to take retaliatory steps over its neighbours' move to join. So I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? And for our Royal Roundup, I'll be joined by Charles Ray to discuss all the latest in the royal household today. The Queen has been out and about at the Royal Windsor Horse Show after missing the state opening of Parliament earlier this week. And then William visits Deborah James. It was just an incredible thing, wasn't it? Bow Babe, that's her other name, to give her a damehood. All of that coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or why not tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my miserable panel former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and, of course, comedian Leo Kirst. First, though, right, that's a nice, interesting look, Leo, for you. I don't know. Did you know you were on camera?
Yes. No, I didn't actually realise that. No. You said we're miserable, so we thought better look miserable.
That's true. So what do you think, then? OK, so the government, where, you know, you're so stupid, here's an advert for Kentucky Fried Chicken. Oh, yeah, you're going to go off and order some... I mean, and before 9 o'clock as well. I mean, come on.
No, well, you say people are stupid if people are too bright to fall for adverts. Why do they show adverts then? Adverts obviously work, or they wouldn't invest millions and millions of pounds in showing adverts to people. So, I mean, from that point of view, it totally makes sense.
Yes, but before 9 o'clock, what do you think, Lembit? I mean, come on, what is this?
I think Leo is a pathetic authoritarian git. Because basically...
I think you can say that. Well,
no, I'm allowed to say that. I checked. I used to run my own shows. And I'm
listen to that. He used to run his own shows. Well, not now, my friend.
Not anymore. No, you're in charge now.
Back to you. Back at you.
Basically, lighten up. Because basically, advertising is all about just persuading people to do things they want to do anyway. You don't get people to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken if they didn't want to actually eat fried chicken. They just eat Kentucky Fried, KFC, instead of the other
So you think people are going to definitely buy some fried chicken, but you're just steering them towards Kentucky Fried Chicken instead of Mississippi Fried Chicken?
No, in your stupid world, OK?
Oh, my stupid world?
Oh,
That's a pretty...
really?
With respect.
We've only just
That's a nasty thing
started.
to say about Scotland.
Let me finish.
No.
That wasn't
I think it means
racist.
the world in your head. Carry on.
Generally, the world in your head.
Yeah.
Thank you for recovering me there. Basically, in your world,
Yeah.
I want to have a Caesar salad. I'm going to eat a banana. But suddenly I see a TV advert for Kentucky Fried Chicken. Oh, I'll change my entire view and eat that instead.
Exactly.
Really, Leo?
Well, so
really?
the adverts don't make any difference. Why are you upset about them banning adverts of junk
what
food?
happens is...
What's different?
right.
And also, would you...
No, hang
would
on,
you
hang on.
like, would
You've
you
asked him a
like schools-
question, let him
Would you
answer.
like schools to have adverts
one
for
question at a
cigarettes,
time. Go on.
adverts for crack
No,
cocaine
that's
across
enough.
the murals in the classroom?
Take the schools example. We all agree in education, it's which school you go to. We all agree we have to eat. It's what you eat. And if you want to live on salad, which I'm sure you do, because you ingest your fantastic body in some kind of a healthy environment.
Oh, let Mick carry on digging his own grave.
No, I was
I
about
don't
to
know
do
where
that.
you're going with that.
Basically, I realised I was...
I just want to let him carry on.
Let me finish.
Go on.
But let me finish. The serious point here is, if you want to have Kentucky Fried Chicken, you might be competing with burgers and steaks and something else. You're not going to be eating vegan food. And you, well, maybe you think that if you eat a salad and you see a Kentucky Fried Chicken advert,
exactly.
you're going to change your entire...
Now, Leo,
that's not going to happen.
Leo, that is a good point, right? Because, look, if you could show me an advert of McDonald's, KFC, you can show me... if I'm somebody who doesn't want to eat that, I'm not going to eat that. People who are overweight and eat junk food will eat junk food. It's just a question of which junk food they eat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what time you place that advert.
Exactly.
And also, what's 9 o'clock? Why 9 o'clock? As if they think that people are just going to stop watching at 9 o'clock, only the overweight people are going to start watching TV.
No, I agree that...
What are they thinking?
Fat, stupid people are going to eat fat, stupid food. That's going to happen.
Well, exactly.
What
So
we need
no
to do is
advert.
scrap...
People aren't
scrap
stupid.
KFC. Scrap KFC
There's
adverts.
nothing wrong with KFC adverts. I quite
we
like...
need to scrap these junk food adverts and replace them with fat shaming. We need to bring back... You know that beach body bikini that Sadiq Khan got banned
you see...
from YouTube? We need to get that rammed in.
You are so out of order.
He's joking now. He's joking.
No, I'm not joking. We need to bring
are.
back fat shaming. We've suddenly become... We've made it socially acceptable to be disgustingly fat.
No.
And that's wrong. And as a result, we're all
So
dying.
when you're fat,
I'm
and
never
I sit
fat.
here, if you ever are fat...
This is as fat as I get.
OK, at this stage, when you're, like, let's say, 70, and you're fat, and I go, oh, look how embarrassed you should be about your body.
Yeah, quite right. I'd thank you. I'd thank you for trying to put me on this...
Yeah, but okay.
Track
But first of all, OK, so listen. Look, the bottom line is this. It's a nonsense tactic. The idea is to help us with the cost of living. So they've decided that they're going to bring back the bog-off ideas and not limit us from, being advertised this sort of thing before 9 o'clock. To me, that's a nonsense starter. It's a silly idea. And they are not there to police what we buy if the shops are offering it and what time the adverts will be on.
You can still buy it.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be their... What I'm saying is that's not really their jurisdiction, is it? If they want to help with the cost of living crisis, there are way more things that could be more impactful.
And that's why they've scrapped the campaign.
Yeah,
that's why they're not taking away these adverts.
No, but what I'm saying is
you're literally giving them a hard time for doing what you want them to do.
What I'm saying is the focus, the fact that they're even focusing on things like that is ridiculous. They could be focusing on those big companies, those companies that made money during the pandemic, where they could be windfalling, taxing energy companies who have said that.
Didn't make money during the pandemic. Oil prices crashed and like BP, Shell, they were losing money hand over fist.
That's true. I'm not talking about those. I said and the companies that made money during the pandemic. Right now, or even oil companies have admitted, the boss of BP has even said, look, it'd be fine. We would survive. They're only taxing their additional profits anyway, and that could help substantially. So what I'm saying is these minutiae things that they're saying will help you with the cost of living by allowing you now, we're going to scrap a silly idea anyway, so you can buy 2 for 1, or we'll advertise 2 for 1 before a certain time. It's like, really? Is that the best you can come up with?
Buy one, get one free was something... When I worked for Procter & Gamble, great company, we did that because we sold more products. Why, Leo, do you think that we should be punishing people or corporations for doing something which is industrially smart? Do you really think this virtue signalling should go that far?
How is it virtue signalling to not show an advert for fried chicken? I mean, that's
So you think that if there isn't an advert for fried chicken, I'm going to stop eating it? Really?
I think it'll have like some effect. It'll like
it's the way.
the population.
Instead, I'll have a salad. I'll have a salad instead.
It removes the sort of normalisation.
It's a silly idea.
Rubbish.
Ridiculous.
It's a silly idea.
Rubbish.
These companies take advantage of the fact that these foods trick our brains, sugar and fat.
Yeah, but nobody's putting the food in your face and saying you're going to eat it. They're just giving you an advert and saying you have the freedom of choice. It's an option.
Do you think that parents and 18-year-olds don't have the right to make a choice? You think
they can still make the choice. Nobody's stopping them going and destroying their
exactly.
bodies.
That's exactly the point. That's exactly the point.
If you've got something on TV, an adult will suddenly go, I'll have this instead.
No, it normalises it. It makes it seem as if it's a normal thing to do.
I think KFC is normal.
Listen,
I think KFC is normal.
Frankly,
it should be a
listen, people are going off on a tangent on other places. The point of it is we are looking at a cost of living crisis, and the government are coming up with this as a solution to help as one of the pieces in the puzzle to help us with the solution to the cost of living, which I'm saying is a nonsense angle, a silly approach, whilst they shouldn't be tampering and dabbling with that sort of thing anyway. Really what they should be doing is looking at how they can properly save us money, how they can not waste time on things like that.
But that's literally what they're doing.
No.
They've stopped this campaign.
No.
So they can focus on more important stuff. You're giving them a hard time.
No, I'm not giving them a hard time.
Exactly what you want.
I'm giving them a hard time for coming up with a stupid idea, then retracting a stupid idea.
It wasn't a stupid idea.
I think it
was a good idea for different times, where we didn't have war in Ukraine, a cost of living crisis, rapid inflation.
Well, I'll tell you what then, mate. What we're going to do is we're going to allow you to buy 2 for the price of 1. We're going to advertise it before 9 o'clock so that you can see when it's on, instead of perhaps taxing the windfall companies and reducing your national insurance, because in actual fact, we think we're going to do better that way. So you're going to save. What we're going to do is allow you to save more money instead of allowing you to actually have to spend less. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Go on, Leo.
How about buy one salad, get one salad free? Why don't you introduce that?
I don't hate you, I pity you. Because I'm not going to stop eating salad.
Depends, Leo.
We're the same age.
Depends, Leo, whether you classify salad as junk food, doesn't it? Right. Well, see, that was... I'm exhausted now. Crikey. I mean, do you know what they were talking about? I haven't got a clue. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, it's time for our great British debate this hour. And I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? NATO, I was going to say, who are they? Finland adopted neutrality after its defeat by the Soviet Union in World War II, while Sweden hasn't been part of the military alliances for more than 200 years. But there has been a huge surge in public support for both countries to join NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russia has said, though, it'll be forced to take, as if you could force Vladimir Putin to do anything, retaliatory steps over its neighbours' move to join. So I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? Send me your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet at GBNews. There is a poll up right now asking the question, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin? Cast your vote now. First, let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking fine and dry, but the increasing risk of showers moving into southwest England. Let's take a look at the details. Starting off in southwest England, and there'll be a risk of showers here this evening. Some could be heavy, with the risk of some hail and thunder. Southeast England and London will be dry at 7 o'clock this evening, though the risk of showers increases later, feeling warm and muggy. Much of Wales will be dry this evening, but there will be an increasing risk of showers in the south, some perhaps heavy and thundery. Over to the Midlands, and it will be dry with sunny spells this evening, but the risk of a few showers perhaps moving into the far south later. Feeling warm and humid. It'll be a fine end to the day across northern England, with plenty of sunshine ahead of dusk. Patches of cloud, but dry with temperatures around 15 Celsius, making it rather warm. A few lingering showers across Shetland, otherwise a fine and dry end to the day across Scotland, with light winds and plenty of sunny spells before dusk. 16 degrees in Edinburgh. Northern Ireland will see a fine end to Saturday with sunshine for all, albeit rather hazy. On the warm and humid side here too, with Belfast around 17 degrees Celsius. Heavy showers will continue to move northwards as we move into the early hours, some perhaps thundery. The driest weather found across Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So it's 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing Boris's bog-off ban, which he's lifted now. Let's see what you think and what you've been saying. John says the answer to the cost of living crisis is simple. Get rid of foreign aid. Well, that's a start, isn't it? I mean, it'd be better than... Do you know what? Instead of that, we're going to allow advertisers to advertise 2 for 1 before 9 o'clock. I mean, seriously. Jess says, when at school, I was very fat and was called names, but that spurred me on to lose weight. Yes. Sometimes it can... What's a Leo? Somebody's agreeing with
you, Leo.
Yeah.
Were you fat at school, Leo?
Were you fat at school? No.
So you say.
I was like 6'2" at school.
I was actually quite chubby when I was at school. Right,
Never.
That's true. Junk food. Fred says junk food adverts help to make people fat. It's a shame adverts for gyms don't work as well as them. That's true, isn't it? Like those things, those those exercise bikes and things. Alex says, you just have to eat in moderation. I eat everything and anything, but I walk everywhere. Just exercise and be happy eating. Exactly. Right, so keep those emails coming, but now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? Membership of the political and military alliance would be a historic decision for Finland, which actually shares about 1,300 kilometres borders with Russia. Now, Finland adopted neutral status after its defeat by the Soviet Union in World War II, but Sweden hasn't been part of any military alliance for more than 200 years. There has been, of course, a surge, though, in public support in both countries for NATO membership following Russia's invasion. And this has caused them to have a rethink. But Russia has said it will be forced to take retaliatory steps over its neighbour Finland's move to join. So for my Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? Let's first speak to a former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman. Hello, Major. Welcome to the programme. Now, first of all, why aren't Sweden and NATO and Finland not in NATO yet? What is the reasoning for that?
Well, every country has its own independent foreign policy, and that's what Sweden and Finland have had. The reason that they're taking the potential decision to join NATO is the paradox of the Russian position, which is that for every time they do things, their actions are what drives Sweden and Finland towards NATO. It's not quite true to say that they've been neutral, because they are still being participants in lots of foreign missions. So, for example, both Sweden and Finland were part of Operation Resolute Support in Afghanistan, for example. They were amongst the troop contributing nations. And they've also been part of the EU Defence and Security Alliance and some of those missions. So neutrality does have a status in international law, but it doesn't mean that you don't participate in military missions if you wish to do so.
I see. So Vladimir Putin has been saying that people shouldn't encroach on his territory and so, or NATO is not allowed to get any closer. But what business of his is it for him to dictate what other countries should and shouldn't be doing?
Well, that's exactly the point. And when the Soviet Union invaded Finland in 1939 in the Winter War, that's where the noun Finlandization came from. That a more superior power should have the right to constrain the foreign policy of another country. And that is what they're standing up for now. And in the first meeting that the Finnish president had with Putin in 2012, he did say that every independent nation maximizes its security. The maximization of Sweden and Finland's security is deemed to be having its position in NATO in the future.
See. Right. So, in terms of so basically, you're saying. So, just give us if you could sum that up again for me, because I'm sort of trying to understand what you just said there. Could you just repeat that, but so that I can understand it again? Because I heard what you said, but I kind of missed parts of it.
Every nation has an independent right to establish where it goes in the future as a sovereign state. That's what the Russians were trying to constrain in Ukraine. That's what they're trying to constrain with their talk of retaliatory action in Finland and Sweden.
Right. So what do you make of the timing of all this then? Because obviously Vladimir Putin is, he's obviously not happy with what's going on in Ukraine. You can see, quite frankly, that it's not going that well for the Russians. It doesn't matter what he says, if that's the way it's happening, and obviously we're getting our reports that that's what's happening, then he can't be happy with this. So this particular timing now, do you think that this is actually the right time for them to do that?
Well, I think it is. I mean, Russia's probably at its lowest ebb. It won't be in a position to establish any sort of second front, even if it wanted to, in a warlike posture. Neither do I think that will happen at all. And you have to remember that Sweden doesn't share a common land border with Russia. It has common maritime interests. Finland does, of course, as you said, Nana, with the 810-mile border. But of course, to go on any land grab, for example, in Finland, that would have to come really out of the sort of area of St. Petersburg. That isn't going to happen because that would be in the deep battle of NATO or of Finland were that to happen. And, St. Petersburg is one of the jewels in the Russia's crown. So any talk of retaliatory action is more diplomatic than real in terms of military action. We did hear about a month ago from Medvedev, the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, that the retaliatory action then might include reinforcing naval units in the Baltic Sea and including nuclear weapons. But the Baltic Sea is in many ways an inconvenience for Russia because it's bordered by lots of NATO countries, and you have to go through a very narrow strait through Danish territory to get there. So Russia is really a continental power with an inconvenient maritime flank on the north and south.
So what's with Turkey's president then? Because he's said that he's going to stop the whole thing. He's going to put in a veto of some form. What do you think? Where's his sort of power within this? Can he block this from happening if Finland or Sweden try to join? And why would he even want to do that in any case?
Well, all things are constrained by three things here, both domestic politics, alliance politics, and perceptions of Russia. Now, Turkey have actually been providing a lot of Bayraktar 2 drones to Ukraine, so they are in the fight against Ukraine in that sense. This is really to do with domestic Turkish politics. It's to do with the PKK, that is the perception of the terrorist group that they have on their southern border across to Iraq and Syria, and that is just something that they would like to sort. So that could be sorted diplomatically. I don't think that will be a source of veto on membership of Sweden and Finland into NATO.
Okay, interesting. So how likely do you think it is that they're going to join? And if so, how quickly will they join?
Well, I think the first part of the process will come at the Madrid summit. There's a NATO summit in June. And the process of accession could last anywhere between 4 and 12 months. And you could argue that that is a period of instability because you haven't got the Article 5 NATO guarantee. That's an attack on one is an attack on all. But of course, we've had Boris Johnson this week saying that we will give them security guarantees. And of course, that has its own strategic ambiguity. That can mean as much or as little as you want. But we also, of course, have really given security assistance to Ukraine. So the assistance you could give to Finland or Sweden can take, as I said, any form that you really like.
Oh, interesting stuff. Well, listen, thank you so much, Chip, for joining us. That's Major General Chip Chapman. He's the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence. Let's briefly see what you've been saying. Ken says it's up to them if they want to join. If they want to join, then why not? Paul says Putin is unstable enough already. If they defy him now, it could lead to increased tensions and war. I'm not saying they shouldn't join, given everything that's happened, but the above is a possible reason why not. Henrietta says one of Putin's concerns is the past, rightly or wrongly, was NATO's eastern expansion. Ironic, then, how a war he's instigated has led to more expansion. Yeah, in fact, it seems to have all gone completely wrong for him. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue the great British debate. In this hour, I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Liberal Democrat MP Len Vidopik and also comedian Leo Kearse. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. The headlines: Sinn Féin's president is accusing the Prime Minister of using Ireland as a negotiating tactic with the European Union. Mary Lou McDonald made the comments amid a political standoff at Stormont, with Boris Johnson set to visit Northern Ireland on Monday. Yesterday, the Democratic Unionist Party blocked the election of an Assembly Speaker, preventing a new executive from forming as a protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol. Well, Boris Johnson has revealed the first 50 migrants have been told they'll be sent to Rwanda within the next 2 weeks. In an interview with the Daily Mail newspaper, the Prime Minister said he's ready for a fight with what he's calling lefty lawyers seeking to challenge the government's plan for asylum seekers. As you've been hearing, Finland's president has spoken to his Russian counterpart about the country's plan to join NATO. President Sauli Niinisto says the phone conversation with Vladimir Putin was direct and without aggravation. The Kremlin says President Putin told Finland abandoning its neutrality and joining NATO would be a mistake. And health campaigners have accused the government of playing politics with the well-being of children by delaying a ban on unhealthy food promotions. The Department of Health says special offers for food and drink that are high in fat, salt or sugar are now set to be banned from October next year. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. We'll have more from Nana Akua in just a moment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, good. Oh, I totally forgot what was going on there. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. If you just join me, where have you been? Or where have I been? Crikey. Right, let's get back to the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? Membership of the political and military alliance will be a historic decision for Finland, which shares about 1,300 kilometres of border with Russia. Now, the Nordic nation actually adopted neutrality after its defeat by the Soviet Union in World War II. Sweden, too, hasn't also been part of any military alliances for more than 200 years. But there has been a surge in public support for both countries for NATO membership following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But Russia has said it will be forced to take retaliatory steps over its neighbour Finland's move to join. So for my Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and also comedian Leo Kurs. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Lembit. Let's see what you have to say.
Technical mistake there. Finland was never defeated by the Soviet Union. It's an amazing thing.
That's great. I didn't write that.
I understand. I'm not holding you responsible.
So the
heads will roll.
Somebody's head will roll in a minute.
That's a very Soviet response. Just passing the buck to someone else.
No, I didn't write it.
The Finns take this very seriously because the country with about 5.5 million people now, even fewer then, they actually fought against the Soviet Union, and for reasons we haven't got time to explain now, but they actually stopped the Soviet Union from invading. So the reason they became neutral was because they thought, the Soviet Union's got like 300 million people. We've got 5.5 million people. Let's sue for peace. I think it's a bad idea for them to join NATO because they've always had this kind of historical understanding. My parents are Estonian, just across the water from Finland. Any Estonian can tell you what happens if you declare war on the Soviet Union. It doesn't work well. And I just think this is a mistake. Not because I support the Soviet Union or Russia particularly. I just think it's a stupid decision.
Well, I thought they were defeated, actually, but I thought that
they weren't
that there was a war. There was a war.
No, they actually they declared they did not lose. They actually declared a kind of armed neutrality with the
So they didn't win.
But they didn't lose. They were not defeated. That's the point. Now, joining the... I know this is almost a very technical discussion. Joining NATO is a provocation. Finland's always avoided that.
Why? Listen,
it's a provocation.
It's like a sort of schoolboy that's not happy with what he got. What do you think, Leo?
No, I think they're absolutely right to join NATO. As we've seen with Ukraine, there's no guarantee that Russia and Putin are going to keep peace, or aren't going to invade and cross the border. So Ukraine, when it got rid of its nuclear weapons in the 90s, was given promises by Russia that it wouldn't be invaded.
Well, by Russia, America, the United Kingdom.
That
we'd step up in the
where are those? How much are those guarantees worth now? You know, it's now that Putin has been utterly humiliated. I almost feel sorry for Putin. He's always been, for the last 20 years, we've seen him as this,
You feel sorry for him.
Grandstanding dictator, with this incredibly powerful military, and we've seen. I'm going to use that phrase again. It's a Potemkin army.
No,
it looks good in parades, but it's absolutely.
Look.
It's poorly run.
But it could be devastating. You say it, but there is, they've obviously devastated parts of Ukraine, which is ridiculous. I'm very glad that Ukraine are managing to push them back and really show real strength. And I'm glad that these countries have decided to join NATO. But when I look at this, this, I ask, well, who does he think he is to tell people whether they can or they can't join NATO? And why are we empowering him, in a sense, by saying, oh, well, he's going to be really upset if we encroach on his territory? And even the Vatican, do you not hear about the Vatican, who weren't particularly ready? It didn't sound like they were prepared to completely sort of go against Putin. They were they weren't appeasing him, but they weren't really saying anything. And actually the response was that, what can we sort of, because they're encroaching, and they promised that they wouldn't.
Yeah, but the Vatican are looking at power and influence, so there's
probably looking at oil and gas, actually.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking at.
Basically, myself and Leo had a very, very heated run-in this very studio on Mark Dolan's show. When it comes down to it, I actually think that Putin has a point when it comes to his concern, but he's completely messed it up by invading and trying to conquer Ukraine. Why? Because, in my opinion, NATO hasn't been entirely true to its promise. This is a really technically complicated thing. But when it comes down to it, you don't kill civilians. You don't invade a country just because you're not happy with the arrangement. And to that extent, fair play, Leo, we probably didn't have a great interaction when we discussed this. I agree with you on that. But when it comes down to it, on the west side, Estonia and Finland and Sweden, if they join, then they change the power balance. Now, you can argue it in two ways. On the one side, you can say, what will Putin do? That's not really a moral argument. The other side of it is, should Finland actually join? Really, Finland has actually been able to coexist with Russia for 50, 60 years without having a war.
But so is Ukraine. So is Ukraine. So is Ukraine. Ukraine has been there. I mean, OK, apart from the Crimea thing, but before that, they seem to be working peacefully alongside.
No, it's different. Finland and Moscow, Helsinki and Moscow have always had a kind of an understanding. Now, I've been to Helsinki, 50 times. I used to work in Tallinn, so I used to go through there all the time. And they don't like the Great Bear, but they understand the Great Bear, which is to their east.
Even calling him the Great Bear is almost like some sort of statuesque thing that you've elevated him to some sort of skip position that's frightening, and immediately you seem to be the recowering as some sort of.
They've got 300 million people.
Yeah, but
they've got nuclear
I think
weapons.
people need to stop talking about him like the Great Bear. And
geographically, Finland is big, and I'm interested in.
Call him the little bear.
Pardon?
The small.
It's a big bear.
Oh, the crazy bear. The crazy bear.
It's like the Wizard of Oz. You know, the Wizard of Oz at the end when they find him and he's just this like little old guy. That's what Putin looks like now. It's ridiculous. And NATO is a purely defensive organisation. It's not going to invade Russia. For all that Putin talks about the threat from NATO isn't going to. There's nothing Russia's got that NATO wants. Maybe some of those dolls where you take out and there's another smaller doll inside.
Oh, I love those. My daughter's got one of those. What do you call those things? What do they call the little babushka dolls? Yeah,
they're
babushka dolls. The little ones really small.
We're not going to nuke Moscow to get them. You know what I mean? Russia, we can do.
I think you're diminutizing the situation, Leo.
We can cope without Russian oil and gas. We'll, in 10 years' time, we'll be completely undependent on any Russian oil and gas.
Finland, in international politics, we can be purist and we can be intense. Finland and Russia have an accommodation. Estonia, which has a very large Russian population, doesn't really want to have a war with Russia because they've actually got a very good accommodation about the Russians there.
So did Ukraine. Ukraine's got a lot of Russians, a lot of Russian speakers.
That's the reason we've got this problem. Because...
well, then by your very logic, then they're going to have a problem with him too.
They need to have a referendum on the east side. And Zelensky, the president of Russia, president of Ukraine, is talking about that and probably will end up with a political solution. It's a big mess and it's very unstable, and to that extent I agree with Leo. It's a really difficult situation, but we need to get a political solution. Russia is unlikely to dominate Ukraine. We're unlikely in the West to push them all the way back to Moscow.
Well, it's looking like that. I mean, I'm looking at bits of Russia on a map and seeing, that'd be a nice part of Ukraine. I think Ukraine could seriously push Russian troops out of Donbass and out of Crimea and retake land that Putin took
Well, I don't think that Putin should be allowed to have any of the land he's taken. I mean, OK, if they've accepted the annexing of Crimea, then well, OK, but all the new stuff, even Crimea, I would be wanting to take that back. But the people of Crimea might be quite happy with the situation, so you've got to find out what they want there. But looking at this, really, Vladimir Putin, I think people elevate him to the status of the Great Bear and allow him to have too much room by saying things like, oh, well, you know, if he doesn't want us to encroach, then we shouldn't. And yet it should be up to each individual country as to whether they join NATO and their people within that country. And that's called democracy. And that's what he doesn't want.
You're right, Leo. You're right, Nana. It's up to individual countries. Tactically speaking, I think that it's unwise for Finland to join NATO. I'm not actually making a philosophical point here, because they get on with Russia in a way which secures that 1,300-kilometre border. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it might not be so secure. Look at the way he backed his troops up along the border of Ukraine and invaded.
If they invade Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania or Norway or Sweden, then we're in a world war. And that's the end of the game.
Well, that's why they're joining NATO, because actually by them doing that, hopefully that will stop it. Well, let's see. This show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice. This is your opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what you really think about the topics we're discussing. Let's see if Craig there in St Albans can give us a little bit more sense than this pair I have here. Craig, welcome to the programme. Right, Craig, so what do you think then? I mean, should they try and join NATO in your view and stand up against Vladimir Putin? Is that the right thing to do?
Yeah, I personally think it is the correct thing to do. I mean, one thing that Lembit didn't mention in the peace treaty is that Finland actually had to give over 9% of its territory to Russia when they signed that actual peace treaty. Now, everybody talks about the massive land border between Russia and Finland, but there's actually a more strategic part in the Baltic Sea. If you actually look at how much of Russia is between Finland and Estonia, by St. Petersburg, which is Russia's second largest city, that's their only entrance into the Baltic Sea for their navy. Now, if NATO are then supporting Finland, it actually blocks Russia being able to use any of their ships and their navy forces across the Baltic Sea. So it's very, very strategic. And I think it is definitely a good way for Finland and Sweden. And I don't agree with Lembit when he said this is going to lead to World War III. I think this is actually going to show Russia that they can't be the big bully in the playground. You know, in the past, they've been sort of pushing people around, but now they're actually beating this Ukraine up as like the little kid in the playground, and everybody's got to stand up to them. We can't be dealing with big bullies like this, and it's serious. So we do need to support Finland and Sweden and stop Russia doing what they're doing in Ukraine.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Craig. That's a nice job as well. Good to put Lembit back in his place as well. Well done, Craig. That was Craig Shepherd there in St Albans. Thank you so much. Right, so today I'm asking, should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? And how do you feel about what's just happened there?
Craig's made a perfectly valid point. I can't say I'm right. And Craig argued his position. I'm a fair player. That's why I'm not in politics anymore. But basically, when it comes down to it, he's right that maybe the game plan is slightly different. But if we try to block off the Gulf of Finland, that's what he was describing, Russia's going to take action. That's what I'm saying.
Well, anyway, let's quickly see then what you've been saying. Anthony says it might be a good idea for them to apply and then leave it for a bit to be considered. That might put some pressure on Putin to stop the war in Ukraine. Very true. Gary says NATO membership would protect Sweden and Finland from the nasty dictator. And Alex said they don't need to join NATO. The UK are now protecting them. So, in effect, they are in NATO. That's a good way of doing it for all European countries not in NATO. And Bill says, of course, Finland and Sweden should join NATO. Putin and his rogue state are a threat to world peace, and more members of NATO. The more members we have, the better. Right, we'll keep all your thoughts coming. There's a poll up on Twitter right now as well, asking should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join. Currently, 80% of you say yes. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV and on digital radio. Till to come, the Queen has been out and about at the Royal Windsor Horse Show after missing the state opening of Parliament earlier this week. Charles Ray will be joining me to discuss. But first, let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking fine and dry, but the increasing risk of showers moving into southwest England. Let's take a look at the details. Starting off in southwest England, and there'll be a risk of showers here this evening. Some could be heavy, with the risk of some hail and thunder. Southeast England and London will be dry at 7 o'clock this evening, though the risk of showers increases later, feeling warm and muggy. Much of Wales will be dry this evening, but there will be an increasing risk of showers in the south, some perhaps heavy and thundery. Over to the Midlands, and it will be dry with sunny spells this evening, but the risk of a few showers perhaps moving into the far south later. Feeling warm and humid. It'll be a fine end to the day across northern England, with plenty of sunshine ahead of dusk. Patches of cloud, but dry with temperatures around 15 Celsius, making it rather warm. A few lingering showers across Shetland, otherwise a fine and dry end to the day across Scotland, with light winds and plenty of sunny spells before dusk. 16 degrees in Edinburgh. Northern Ireland will see a fine end to Saturday with sunshine for all, albeit rather hazy. On the warm and humid side here too, with Belfast around 17 degrees Celsius. Heavy showers will continue to move northwards as we move into the early hours, some perhaps thundery. The driest weather found across Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
So good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Right now, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. Podcaster Deborah James, she was awarded a damehood by Prince William at her family home. What a fabulous woman she is. Deborah, who's 40 and the host of the BBC's You and Me and the Big C, said on Instagram that she was utterly honoured. William joined her for afternoon tea and champagne. So now I'm joined with a royal correspondent to The Sun, Charles Ray. Charles, loving you, looking very, very good in all that.
Thank you very much.
So that's such a beautiful story. I mean, this morning when I read it, I was felt quite emotional reading all that.
It was, and what I liked about it is that they announced it on one day, and then William turns up in the garden with the award 24 hours later. And I think that's you seeing the royal family at its very best.
Yeah.
And because that doesn't normally happen. You know, when people are nominated and told they're getting some sort of award, they usually have to wait months, you know, for it, and it's a big event at the palace, and, you know, people bringing swords out and, you know, all pomp and circumstance. And it's really nice that he went to her home, sat in the garden with her husband, the kids, and the rest of the family. It was a nice family day, and I loved the raising of the glasses of the champagne. Because let's not forget, this girl is now receiving end-of-life treatment. And I think it's shades of Colonel Tom Moore.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought about.
He raised so much money as well, and she's doing exactly the same.
What a wonderful woman, and you know, it's so sad that you know she is dying, and she you know, and it must be one of the hardest things you're ever going to have to deal with, to be told something like that. But what an incredible spirit
and
she has.
She was writing for The Sun as well, my old paper. So that's another tick as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, a brave lady, and you know, thoroughly well deserved this award.
I know, how fabulous.
And she'll never. She and the family will never forget that afternoon.
No.
Never. You can't beat it.
And that's one of the great things about having a royal family, that the impact that they have when somebody like this wonderful woman, Deborah, gets a chance to sort of be given such a fantastic honour. We want somebody at the head of state in that way to present that to her, because she's a fantastic woman. And now, speaking of other fantastic women, the Queen. Yeah. Wow. Well, she's been out and about.
I think after all the months and months of anxieties that we've all had in this country about her health, it was absolutely fantastic to see her at the Windsor Horse Show, arriving first of all in the Range Rover, then walking with a stick to her place to watch some of the events. And it was good as well. She got a standing ovation, which was fantastic. She had the old headscarf on. It was back to the glory days. And it was nice to see that her fell pony, Balmoral Leah, became supreme champion.
There's a picture of her cheering as well.
Oh, yeah, she was like all the... She gets really animated at horse shows. And now that will make up for the Derby in June. She did have some horses that were going to race in that. It's the only classic race that she's never won as an owner. Yes. And she's not going to win it this year because she's had to withdraw the horses. They're not quite ready yet. But it was fantastic to see her. Absolutely fantastic. And I think that we can allay the fears. We know the legs aren't working properly. We know she's getting older. Yeah. But apart from the legs, her health is partly in very good condition.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that as well. And there was one person who said that they were so amazed that they got to see the Queen up front.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's when people say things like, the royal family, what's the point of them and all that? Well, this is the point, actually.
This is the point.
This is the point. We see people behaving, giving us an example of respectful behaviour.
And I think she was also showing the country that I'm still Queen, I'm still here, I might be 96, but I'm still going on and I'm still going to carry on.
Yeah, and people like Meghan just couldn't simply hack it at all. So that's why she's no longer part of the royal family as a working royal and won't be on the balcony. Sorry, I'm so evil. Charles Ray, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to speak to you. That's Charles Ray. He is a fabulous royal correspondent, former royal correspondent to The Sun. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. So it is fast approaching 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. You can even stream us live on YouTube. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. But first, it's time to get an update with your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. The top stories this Saturday. Sinn Féin's president is accusing the Prime Minister of using Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic as a negotiating tool with the European Union. Mary Lou McDonald made the comments amid a political standoff at Stormont, with Boris Johnson set to visit Northern Ireland on Monday. Yesterday, the Democratic Unionist Party blocked the election of Assembly Speaker, preventing a new executive from forming as a protest against the post-Brexit trading agreement.
Boris Johnson can't play games with the people of the North or with the island of Ireland. He has connived with the DUP to use Ireland, to use the north of Ireland, to use unionism in Ireland as a pawn in a wider game that is being played out with the European Union. And that is clearly a shameful tactic and approach, and it's one that is absolutely not acceptable.
Well, the DUP leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, told GB News at the heart of the Good Friday Agreement is consensus, and not a single recently elected unionist agrees on the Northern Ireland Protocol.
It is harming our economy, it is undermining political stability, it actually contravenes the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement, because at the heart of that agreement is there shall be no change to the constitutional status of Northern Ireland without the consent of its people, and yet there has been no consent given for this protocol. And so if we're to restore power sharing on the basis of consent or consensus in Northern Ireland, then the protocol needs to be dealt with. And I've been calling on the government to take decisive action in the absence of agreement with the EU to remove the Irish Sea border.
Well, in news away from home, Finland's foreign minister is meeting his Turkish counterpart to discuss his country's plan to join NATO. It follows talks between the presidents of Finland and Russia, with President Sauli Niinisto of Finland saying the phone conversation with Putin was direct and without aggravation. The Kremlin says President Putin told Finland abandoning its neutrality and joining NATO would be a mistake. Meanwhile, Russian troops have been forced to retreat from some areas of Kharkiv as Ukraine's counter-offensive continues. The region's governor says troops have made good ground near the Russian-held town of Izium, where Moscow's forces have been trying to fight their way south. It's been described as Ukraine's fastest advance since Russian troops pulled away from Kyiv. Here, Boris Johnson has revealed the first 50 migrants have been told they'll be sent to Rwanda within the next fortnight. In an interview with the Daily Mail newspaper, the Prime Minister said he's ready for a fight with what he calls lefty lawyers seeking to challenge the government's plans to push asylum applications offshore. He also renewed calls for workers to return to the office, saying working from home doesn't work and staff are more productive when they're in the workplace. 2 new cases of monkeypox have been confirmed in England. One person is being treated at the infectious diseases unit at St Mary's Hospital in London, and health officials say the other patient who lived with that patient is isolating and doesn't need care. They're not linked to a previous case identified earlier this month. Close contacts are now being notified as a precautionary measure. A 41-year-old woman and 3 dogs have been killed by a car in West London. Officers were called to a street in Chelsea this morning. The Met Police says a 26-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. The podcast host Deborah James has thanked people for all the donations received for cancer research, saying it's been a surreal experience and a humbling 5 days. Prince William visited the 40-year-old, known online as Bowel Babe, to present her with a damehood yesterday. She's now raised more than £5.8 million for cancer research. Her friend, Emma Campbell, told GB News she's been blown away by the response.
She's feeling completely overwhelmed, completely humbled by what's happening, and I imagine so held in a kind of in love and support and the admiration and the pride that we all have. And I think I can't even imagine how the last few days could be topped, in any way.
And there's high hopes today for Sam Ryder, who's going to be representing the UK in tonight's Eurovision final. The 32-year-old TikTok star is one of 25 acts competing for the top prize at the event in Turin, in Italy. He's going to be performing his pop song, Spaceman. Good luck to him. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Now more from Nana.
So it's just gone 5 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So, joining me today, it's former Liberal Democrat Lembit Obik and also comedian Leo Kearse. Still to come in a few moments' time in this week's Difficult Conversations. As it is Mental Health Awareness Week, I'll be speaking to an inspirational campaigner. Ben West has been on a mission to get us all talking more about mental health. And amongst his supporters are the likes of Prince William and Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is positive discrimination a bad idea? A University College of Cambridge professor has remarked that white, privately educated boys are the new disadvantaged group in a move that has left people stunned. But does he have a point? You can get in touch throughout the show. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. So it's now time for my difficult conversation. And this week, as I mentioned, is Mental Health Awareness Week, and the focus this year is on achieving good mental health. Now, the foundation that set this up has been doing this for 22 years in the UK, and its aim, amongst others, is to start conversations about mental health, destigmatise the taboo and build more awareness. So joining me for today's difficult conversation is Ben West. Now, since his 15-year-old brother took his own life in 2018, inspirational campaigner Ben West has been on a mission to get us all talking more about mental health. As I mentioned, he's met the likes of Boris Johnson and also Prince Charles amongst his supporters. So he joins me ahead now of his new book launch, The Book That Could Save Your Life. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Talk to us a little bit about your story, because I know very tragically you lost your brother at 15. Can you tell us more about what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story starts in 2017 when back then I had absolutely no idea what mental health was. No one had ever talked to me about it. No one had ever explained that to me. And then my younger brother, Sam, who was 15 at the time, was diagnosed with clinical depression. And I had absolutely no idea what that was. And then obviously 3 months later in January 2018, very, very unexpectedly, Sam took his own life at home, and me and my mum found him, and I had to perform CPR for 25 minutes, and that experience was absolutely horrendous. And then in the weeks and months afterwards, I realised that actually so many people were feeling really lonely, were feeling really sad, were feeling, really awful, and mental illness was had become so rife within my school community, within my friends, and I really wanted to do something to open that conversation, and I started campaigning for improved mental health awareness, but also improved support, and that's why you see me with the likes of the Prime Minister talking about how we can improve education, improve support within schools to stop people from getting worse and to stop people from going through what my brother had to go through, and obviously how that obviously ended.
But so how did you, Ben, then cope with, because obviously having to perform CPR on your brother and then having to go through that, I mean, that must be harrowing. That's awful. How did you recover from that? I mean, obviously you're probably still in recovery in terms of a constant ongoing battle, but what was your coping mechanism?
Honestly, to start with, if you'd asked me that question 3 years ago, I would have said, oh, yeah, I'm coping so well, I'm doing this. But I didn't cope for a very, very long time, and I sort of pushed it to the back of my mind. I didn't really think about it. I tried to pretend to people that I was feeling okay. And my recovery started actually at the same time that I started writing this book, when I started learning more about my own emotions, about mental health, about, how I can look after myself. And I started to really, when I was writing the book, I wrote it last summer, and I sort of sat there and I wrote, and it's incredibly emotional and it's incredibly honest. And I started writing, and I started particularly writing about what happened that night. And some of the things that happened. And a lot of memories came back to me, and I sort of experienced it for a second time and remembered a lot that happened. And that, for me, was an incredible opportunity to process what actually happened and realise just how bad that was, and sort of learn about, how my brain was working and affected by that trauma. so that I could be a little bit more compassionate to myself when that is affecting my day-to-day. But it is a process, you're right. And that's what this book tries to get to. It's a fact that it's about learning, it's about adapting, it's about understanding yourself a little bit better. Because then we can overcome those barriers and those challenges that we face in life just that little bit better. And obviously, most challenges that people face are not as significant as this. But everyday challenges, when learning about your mental health, getting more able to deal with your own mental health and look after yourself a bit better, that can help you in every aspect of your life. And like you said,
So do you think that the government, though, are doing enough to prioritise it, especially in schools? Obviously, at 15, your brother would have been at school. And, young people, I lecture and go to schools and talk to young people a lot. And do you think the government are doing enough? And if not, what more do you think they could do?
In short, no. I think, to be honest, the government's plan at the moment, and my particular focus is on training teachers. So the government's plan at the moment, which is why I met with Boris Johnson, is to train teachers in mental health first aid. They know that that's something that needs to happen, but their model is taking teachers out of school, taking them out of the workplace, putting them on a course, training them, and then putting them back into schools with the ambition of putting one mental health first aid or one mental health lead per school in the UK. And I think that is great. I think that it's great that that's something that's on the government's radar. But my petition, which you can see me handing to Boris Johnson here, which got 312,000 signatures and a lot of support, actually to ask the government to reconsider how they were rolling that out and actually make that part of teacher training so that when teachers learn to become a teacher, they pick up those valuable and, the way I see it, essential skills to becoming a teacher so that we can then get better early intervention in schools. We can get teachers noticing the signs of students that are struggling, all teachers, rather than just the one that's selected to go on a course. Because one teacher in a school of 2,000 pupils cannot possibly look out for every single student and offer that support and that intervention to the one student that might need it.
Well, of course, and this year the theme is loneliness. And that is a big issue for a lot of people, especially throughout the pandemic. People were on their own and things like that. Just to remind us about what's the book called, and just tell us obviously your story inspired you to write it, and you as you explained, it's about your journey. But what's the aim of the book in the short?
Yeah, so the name of the book is This Book Could Save Your Life, and we chose that name because I genuinely believe teaching people about this, teaching people about my experience, teaching people about what happened that night, about how I coped and how I looked after myself and what I've learned since. And then also what I believe needs to change in society, about teacher training, about support in schools, about education, all of these things. I think it's absolutely vital that this conversation happens and this book exists. And it's called This Book Could Save Your Life because I genuinely believe that the words in that book could save someone's life. Maybe it's the reader, maybe it's someone that the reader knows, maybe it's a friend or a family member, or maybe it's a complete stranger, because we need a priority placed on creating sustainable change and vast change to help those millions and millions of people right now that are feeling lonely, that are in the grips of a mental illness, that are not getting the support they need because the NHS is so stretched far beyond capacity. So the words in the book are a plea for change. They're an educational tool. They're an insight into my horrific experience. And I do believe, and I'm really proud of those words because I think that they truly can save someone's life.
Well, listen, Ben, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck with the book and everything else like that. That's Ben West. He's a mental health campaigner. Thank you for joining us. Well, on the way here on GBNews, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is positive discrimination bad? A University of Cambridge professor has remarked that white, privately educated boys are the new disadvantaged group in a move that has left people stunned. But does he actually have a point? Join us after the break to find out more. But first, let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking fine and dry, but the increasing risk of showers moving into southwest England. Let's take a look at the details. Starting off in southwest England, and there'll be a risk of showers here this evening. Some could be heavy, with the risk of some hail and thunder. Southeast England and London will be dry at 7 o'clock this evening, though the risk of showers increases later, feeling warm and muggy. Much of Wales will be dry this evening, but there will be an increasing risk of showers in the south, some perhaps heavy and thundery. Over to the Midlands, and it will be dry with sunny spells this evening, but the risk of a few showers perhaps moving into the far south later. Feeling warm and humid. It'll be a fine end to the day across northern England with plenty of sunshine ahead of dusk. Patches of cloud but dry with temperatures around 15 Celsius, making it rather warm. A few lingering showers across Shetland, otherwise a fine and dry end to the day across Scotland, with light winds and plenty of sunny spells before dusk. 16 degrees in Edinburgh. Northern Ireland will see a fine end to Saturday with sunshine for all, albeit rather hazy. On the warm and humid side here too, with Belfast around 17 degrees Celsius. Heavy showers will continue to move northwards as we move into the early hours, some perhaps thundery. The driest weather found across Scotland. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 18 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing Mental Health Awareness Week with Ben West. Let's see what you've been saying. Andy says, good job, Nana, and all the team there at GB News. The terrible mental health situation in the UK is a result of the awful lockdown forced upon us by the government. Lee says, do you think that we should be spending more on funding mental health services? I've found that from a friend's experience, not my own, that things like counselling don't really help. Well, you know what? So it depends, doesn't it? Depends on your counsellor. Because I can remember being in a bad relationship and I don't think the counsellor liked me, so it didn't go so well for me. But they made him sound like he was fantastic.
Was that a counsellor or a divorce judge?
No, I've never been married. Nobody wants me, Leo. I'm not that stupid either. I don't want to share my stuff.
Awkward. Just get a taxi.
Yes, of course. Those are my fabulous panellists. We've got Lembit Epic and Leo Kirst joining me today. But it is, of course, time for my Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is positive discrimination bad? A University of Cambridge professor has remarked that white, privately educated boys are the new disadvantaged group, in a move that has left people stunned. The professor in question, David Abulfaya, said that the really disadvantaged candidates are arguably the white males from outstanding independent schools. University admissions have become another site for culture wars in which white male and privilege are terms of disapproval linked together to justify injustice. So does he have a point? In an effort to make universities more diverse, have they made white men the new minority? Are posh white boys the new disadvantaged class? And that's why the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is positive discrimination bad. I'm joined now by Vice-Chancellor of the University of Buckingham, Professor James Tooley. Professor James, thank you so much for joining me. Now, those are quite strong words that he used there, literally saying that white privilege and these sort of things are now becoming negative and impacting on white males, those who are privileged. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, can we look at the facts from University of Cambridge? So the University of Cambridge, like all universities, apart from actually mine is proudly independent, we don't have to do this sort of thing, but all universities, British universities, have to submit a access and participation plan, and that says, well, I've got the Universities of Cambridge here in front of me, that says very clearly, the Cambridge plan, that they are going to increase the number of children from students from underprivileged backgrounds and underrepresented backgrounds, and they will do that. How? They're not going to expand what they do. That they will. The logic of the situation is very clear. They will do it by reducing the number of students who are, in a sense, their existing clientele. And in fact, the data from this access and participation plan shows that over the last 5 years, the group that has declined, the only group that has declined, are what you might call posh white males. Every other group, including posh white females, they've increased in the University of Cambridge, and this would be similar in other universities. So what Professor David Abulafi is saying is in some sense true for universities. The question is it bad or not? And that's perhaps you can have a genuine debate about that. You can have a genuine debate and explore. I was at a state comprehensive school myself, and I knew nothing about going to Oxford or Cambridge. I didn't realise these were options as a young man, as an older child. And it's certainly true. Had I been pushed in the way that I might have been at a grammar school or an expensive private school, that I could have got into those great universities and would have benefited from it. So I can see the story from one side, and but equally well, the story from the other side is that people will be. It is a zero-sum game. If Cambridge and Oxford and other great universities are not expanding, then if you increase the proportion of one group or several groups, you will decrease the proportion of others. That is the reality. That is the reality.
But so James, but white males, privileged white males, they were the majority in these places, weren't they? So for their numbers to decrease, just as you said, it would obviously increase the numbers of those from other backgrounds. Do you think then, from what you said, whether it's a bad thing, do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing then?
As I say, the crucial thing is not to be hypocritical about it. And the Cambridge, denied this when the good prof came out with this statement. The Cambridge University denied that this was the case, saying that they are not discriminating in any way. They are, and as I say, there's an argument to be made for saying if we want to increase the number of disadvantaged students, then let's have this positive discrimination. So I'm not wholly against it. What I'm wholly against is the hypocrisy, saying we don't do it. And then you've got to then find alternatives. That's the key thing. And these people who can't, the young men who can't get into Cambridge, there are other places they can go, of course. And it would be to Cambridge detriment. Maybe this is the question: is it to Cambridge detriment or not to be focusing in this way? It's a very tricky question, Nana. It's very tricky, and as you see, I'm not going to come down on one side of that, except to say the University of Buckingham, because we don't have to do these access and participation plans. We don't discriminate. We don't discriminate against posh boys and girls. Neither do we discriminate against non-posh boys and girls, young men and young women. So that's there are alternatives, I suppose I'm trying to say, but this is the good professor is right in what he says, and it's disingenuous to suggest otherwise. And Cambridge should say we're doing it because we believe in combating privilege, or they should say we're doing it because the government tells us we have to do it. We have to have this access and participation plan, and like it or not, they'll take away our funding or give us other sanctions if we don't, and therefore we have to do it. So I think there's a little bit of honesty required here.
But you think they could just do a blind application? Why do you have to see whether you're male or female? What, do they never do that? Can they just do an application process that doesn't require you to say what your gender is, your racial background or anything like that? Why can't they do that and then surely they'd get the best candidates and it would be irrelevant? Do you think they could do that?
The problem is they are afraid, and as I say, they have to do these plans. The government regulator says they have to do them. So they would be afraid, wouldn't they, that if they allow this open competition, as it were, that they wouldn't necessarily get the right kids. Because the kids, the posh white males, the posh kids from, expensive schools, they probably have been schooled better. They have been allowed to do better. So even if there's a test, unless there's a test that purely measures, as it were, pure cognitive ability, these tests are not popular nowadays. But if there was a test like that, then you probably could do a completely free application and select the best people on those. But the test Cambridge uses is not a pure cognitive ability test. It brings in lots of cultural knowledge and so on. And so they're not able to do that either. But look, Nana, I'm not in favour of what Cambridge is doing, but I can understand the argument, I suppose.
You can understand why they're doing it, yeah. Well, listen, Professor, it's been good. Well, go on, that last point you were making looks very animated. Go on, make that point, and then you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to say, but, it's not... People are not disadvantaged forever, are they? That's the point. So, Cambridge, I can see them arguing, well, these people can go somewhere else. They can go to Durham, Bristol, Buckingham, and they're not going to be disadvantaged forever, whereas the people they're taking on may have that step up, which is the one that's helpful to them forever, yes.
Interesting. It's a tricky one to answer that. Professor James Tooley, you did a great job. Thank you so much for talking to us. He's the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Buckingham. Right, I'm also joined by journalist and broadcaster Sam Dowler. Sam, welcome to the programme. Well, you heard what the Professor said. What do you think, then? Do you think that white males are the posh white men are being discriminated against and that it's a bad thing? Or what's your view on it all?
I actually think it is a good thing. I think it's like James just said just now, the prof, that these are institutions that for hundreds of years were only white men, only privileged white men. And for the pendulum to shift, for things to shift within this country, it's going to take decades. You need to look at the Tory cabinet at the moment. How many of them are, what's the proportion of them that went to private school compared to the rest of the country, for example? So I think, with something like this, absolutely, of course, white privileged males might have to step aside because they've had the run of things for. So I myself went to private school, so I'm speaking against my own kind, but at the same time, it's the right thing to do because you need people from different backgrounds in order to bring different ideas and different also, for example, if they get to, because I do believe, like James says, that it has to be, it should be merit-based. But if somebody has come from a poorer background and has still managed to get even close to the kind of grades that somebody who's had a privileged background gets to, then surely that shows, a hell of a lot more intelligence and moxie than somebody who's just been indoctrinated their whole lives.
Say that, but then you're sort of discriminating against the person just because of their background, so once again you're reversing it and you are discriminating on them just because of their background, because you presume that because of their background they have an advantage, therefore you're going to go for somebody who has a different background and who you see as having a disadvantage and therefore going to elevate them. Do you not think that's slightly unfair, and perhaps what would be better is just a neutral playing field where nobody knows whether they're male, female or rich or poor or any of that, and the background, but simply a neutral stance? Do you think that would work?
I think that would be brilliant, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think that's like, for example, saying that you don't want to see even anybody's name, their surname, or like you said, or their gender or anything like that, or their background or what school they went to. That's so sort of like a blind tasting sort of thing.
Well, what's wrong with that? That's fine, isn't it?
I think that'd be great. I do think it'd be great, but I don't think Cambridge aren't saying that, nor is Oxford, and I don't think that would happen anytime soon. Although I think, Nana, it's a good idea. Yeah. You should be governor.
Well, it seems like the most basic thing. Look, if you're discriminating against people or you're thinking of positive discrimination, why don't you make it a level playing field for absolutely everybody? So who cares what your background? It doesn't matter. If by coincidence you end up with more white male, then you might want to look at the process, your criteria that you've put in place that might be biased towards that. I mean, it could actually be their own selection process that is biased towards enabling white privileged males to be successful, as opposed to the general standard that would give you a better idea.
Oh, absolutely. I think, for example, with a story that came out a few months ago about LinkedIn putting up dyslexic thinking as a plus point, for example. Like, I think, if you had exams whereby, somebody, because obviously these exams have not been changed for a long, long time. I mean, and if somebody who was dyslexic, who could have these fantastic ideas, fell at the first hurdle, that's not fair either. So, I mean, I think they should, they should change the whole examination system to begin with, and then, and then, as I said just now, it's this decades-long process in order to, close a little bit that chasm of elitism within, the upper echelons of this country.
So do you think positive discrimination then, after our little chat there, is a good thing or a bad thing?
In this scenario, I would say it was a good thing.
OK, well, listen, it's been really good to talk to you, Sam Dowler. He's a journalist and also a broadcaster. Thank you so much for joining me. Wow, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, we'll continue with our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is positive discrimination bad? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik, and also comedian Leo Kass. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. The top stories today. Sinn Féin's president is accusing the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, of using Ireland as a negotiating tactic with the European Union. Mary Lou McDonald made the comments amid a political standoff at Stormont, with Boris Johnson set to visit Northern Ireland on Monday. Yesterday, the Democratic Unionist Party blocked the election of an Assembly Speaker, preventing a new executive from forming as a protest against the Northern Ireland Protocol. Finland's foreign minister is meeting his Turkish counterpart to discuss his country's plans to join NATO. It follows talks between the presidents of Finland and Russia. President Sauli Niinisto of Finland says the phone conversation with Russia was direct and without aggravation. The Kremlin says the president of Russia, President Putin, told Finland abandoning its neutrality and joining NATO would be a mistake. Meanwhile, Russian troops have been forced to retreat from some areas of Kharkiv as Ukraine's counter-offensive continues. The region's governor says troops have made ground near the Russian-held town of Izium, where Moscow's forces have been trying to fight their way south. It's been described as Ukraine's fastest advance since Russian troops pulled away from Kyiv. And here, health campaigners are accusing the government of playing politics with the well-being of children by delaying a ban on unhealthy food promotions. The Department of Health says special offers for food and drink that are high in fat, salt and sugar are now set to be banned from October next year. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you with GB News. Nana Akua is here in just a moment.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, And I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GBNews on TV, online and on your digital radio. And it is, of course, time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is positive discrimination bad? A University of Cambridge professor has remarked that white, privately educated boys are the new disadvantaged group, in a move that's left people quite shocked, really. I mean, the professor in question is David Abulafia, and he said that the really disadvantaged candidates are arguably the white males from outstanding independent schools. University admissions have become another site for culture wars in which white, male and privilege are terms of disapproval linked together to justify injustice. So does he have a point? In an effort to make universities more diverse, have they made white men the new minority? Are posh white boys the new disadvantaged class? That's why here at the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is positive discrimination bad? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by former Liberal Democrat MP Len Vidovic and also comedian Leo Kearse. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Leo. What do you make of that? Positive discrimination, do you think it's a bad thing?
I think discrimination is always bad. Positive discrimination is bad because it steals from the success of people who succeed. So people will turn round to the state school kids who got into Cambridge and say, oh, well, you didn't get in because of your merit. You got in because you went to state school. So it's instantly sort of undermining their achievements. They could be there absolutely perfectly well on merit. And also, not all state schools are the same. I mean, some people come out of the state school system and they're not scumbags like me. So, you know, they can get into Cambridge. I think, you know, to assume that everybody from a state school system is, you know, from a broken home and impoverished and all the rest of it. Some state schools are really, really good.
Lembit.
I absolutely agree with Leo for a slightly different reason. Once you introduce positive discrimination, that means that the best people don't get the places because for some other reason, more or less as Leo infers, they get it for some ethnic or societal reason. That does not work for a society over time because what that means is you can work as hard as you can in society and because you're white or middle class or male, you still get demoted because somebody else is meant to take that ethnic place or that societal place. That doesn't work for me. And some people might say, oh, well, it's not fair because black people or whatever don't get the same chances. Society can't work like that over 100 years. Over 5 years, 10 years, you can do it. One example is Blair's government in 1997 and then in 2001 positively discriminated in favour of female members of parliament. And then they left because they just weren't cutting him.
Well, that's not because, interesting, but they might not have been good enough.
That's the reason. That was the reason. Lots of people were positively discriminated. That's your callers come in, but the fact is I met them and they couldn't do the job.
Well, can I just say, though, on a point that you made, Leo, with regard to positive discrimination, I actually agree with that initial point that you made, that sometimes what happens is, we're positively discriminating for black people, so they want some black women or black females. So sometimes I've got a job and people think, you've only got that because you're black. And I can remember when I started here at GB News, there's plenty of, nonsense messages saying that you've got the job because you're black. And actually, well, now you see I'm actually quite good. I'm not bad, am I?
If you say so yourself.
Play that trumpet nice and loud. No, but what I'm saying is, though, but that's not good for me because I've come here with the strength of 30 years in broadcasting, and the first thing people think of, well, you're black, so they probably gave you the job because you're the black token face. But actually, what's happened in my career is that I've been negatively impacted because once they got their quota, of black people. So this is the positive discrimination not working right because they've got enough black people now. So now we've got our one black person. We're not going to give you the job even though you're just good enough. You're good enough and you're better. So this positive discrimination that they're talking about works when they have their quota in. But if suddenly they've got their quota, then suddenly it starts to work in reverse. And if that quota isn't fair, then they're discriminating against you, against your talent. And that's where I have a problem with positive discrimination.
And it's also going to undermine the economy, because what's the point in me striving to give my children the best start in life? What's the point in me earning money so I can send them to a private school and give them tutors and you know, make sure they're brainy if they're not, it's not going to help them get into Cambridge? I might as well just feed them like Kentucky Fried Chicken and sit them in front of the TV.
There's nothing wrong with KFC, whether they don't call it Kentucky Fried Chicken anymore, do they just KFC?
On this point, I agree with Leo. Basically, if you want to invest in your kids, that's the best thing, in my view, that you can do. Your point's really interesting. I hadn't considered that before. You, as a talented black person, might not get the job because you're black.
Because they've got their quota. They've got their quota. They're meant to be positively discriminating to supposedly help people like me get in. But no, we've already got one of those, so we're not going to do that. We'll just carry on. So my idea of this positive discrimination is that you know, it's nice to have a variety of people from all walks of life, because then you get a more eclectic solution to problems, because then you get a view from one side and a view from another, and that's great, because then it helps educating people and also helps with tolerance and socialisation. But the issue that I have with it is that then it becomes too narrow. So, for example, this university thing where you fill in a thing and we will give some black people this, that and the other. Well, actually, maybe it's the selection process that is too narrow. So, and the form that you're filling in might be skewed for one group or another. Do you know what I mean? So, in the end, you end up with this type of person simply because of your selection process.
Yeah.
So, positive discrimination, I don't think works. And I think what I would do is actually just take away all things that would discriminate, would enable someone to discriminate against someone.
And does it feel to you, to both of you, as if these words like white, cisgender, male,
awful.
straight, these are becoming pejorative terms? I saw somebody on Instagram the other day demanding that someone retract the assertion that they were cisgender. They were like, no, I'm not cisgender, I'm non-binary or whatever. Because it's become an insult. Yeah. It's become an insult to call somebody, you know, if you're one of the you know, previously standard things. So I'm worrying that, you know, in this drive to have positive, progressive representation and all the rest of them, we're just creating a new underclass. We're creating a new group of people that we're allowed to abuse and say whatever we like.
On this one, I'm absolutely 100% with you, Leo. I was first arguing against positive discrimination around 1986 when I was president of Bristol University Students' Union. Why? Because by definition, if you positively discriminate, it means you take people into a job who aren't as good as the other candidates. Now, Nana's made a point here, because Nana is clearly a great and talented presenter. I'm not just saying that because I'm on your show, but that's mainly it.
It's probably wise you should say that, though, to be fair.
But the fact is that you made the point yourself. You could actually end up being disenfranchised because I don't think this would happen at GBNews, but it could happen in other organisations where they say, well, we've got that many black people already.
That's what kept happening. Yeah. They kept happening, and they would say, oh, it's political. Now,
but it's ridiculous,
you've got your black
because you're actually from Newcastle.
Well,
I see you from Newcastle. Not that you're black. I see Leo from his comedian history, not from, is it Welsh or Scottish that your accent is?
That's very funny.
I don't care.
Well, he's just a stab at humour.
What I care about is what's in your head. And I disagree with a lot what's in your head, but you say it very well. When you start having these arbitrary distinctions, I'm Estonian, OK? I am massively overrepresented on your show because there's only about 10,000 Estonians in the country. Where do you draw the line? It's ridiculous. I will never, ever support positive discrimination.
I think in the end, what happens is this inclusivity becomes exclusivity.
Yeah,
so it reverses itself. So whilst it is a nice construct and a lovely idea that you're not going to, you're not going to discriminate about this, that, and the other, it's actually rubbish because people look at people and go, well, I like that person because this, that, and the other, and we look at characteristics of people immediately. So I think that you're actually asking people to outlaw their own humanity, which I think is slightly impossible. What I would say for this is that instead of they could actually make this work in terms of the university by simply not knowing what people's names are, where they're from, and stuff like that, because it's not actually relevant.
But the inference here, Nana, is that people would judge you or Leo or Lembit on the basis of the name. I don't give tuppence about what your name is, what your colour is, what your sexual identity is, because if you're good on TV, you're good on TV.
I think it's time to stop doing this. We've got to start trying to stop seeing colour. We've got to try and stop this and stop sort of re-indoctrinating our children to see it. Because then we're just going on the same track every time.
And we're seeing people desperate to get some sort of privilege points, some sort of victimhood points. They can grab onto some of this. Some of this. So you're seeing people like Rachel Dolezal identifying as black, and you're seeing
she's not black, is she?
People have had
Meghan Markle.
She's not. You're seeing people.
She's mixed race.
You're seeing people who aren't homosexual identifying as queer, because it means you can get on the LGBTQ spectrum.
Well, let's see what people are saying, because the show's nothing without them and your views. Let's welcome our great British voice to the show. This is your opportunity to join us. Tell us what you really think about what we're discussing. Jackie is from Hertfordshire. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us. So what do you think? Is positive discrimination a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I do agree with your panel, actually, that any discrimination is absolutely dreadful. And I also want to see that I come from this two ways. I have been a teacher in the past in state school. I've also sent my child to a private school. And what I do know is this. If you want to go to Cambridge or Oxford, you have to work extremely hard, and you have to work extremely hard from year 7 all the way to year 13. There is no let up in it. So I've seen students that I've taught myself in state school go to Cambridge and have the most amazing time. It has truly changed their lives. I've also seen students that want to go, can't go, but that's because they don't have the ability to go. Because when you get there, it is a whole different ballgame. You have to work hard all of the time. And that's something that, we drill into them as teachers. You drill into students to say, it is working at a certain level. But when they take those exams, they're not discriminated against. They have a number, a candidate number, so that the examiner doesn't actually see their name and they can't be prejudiced against them. Wouldn't it be a good idea that when you wrote your UCAS form to Cambridge or Oxford or any university, what you had was a candidate number, and therefore it was truly, they go on what you have written, so that there is no discrimination whatsoever.
Jackie Van Leeuwen, very succinct, and seems that we are cleverer than them. Thank you so much, Jackie. Really good to talk to you. So you see, Jackie says that exactly what I was saying, that actually it doesn't make any sense. It's quite simple. They have a candidate number.
Yeah.
Instead of all this thing about positive discrimination, I will just disagree with one thing, that I don't think all discrimination is bad. So, for example, if you're queuing up to get on a ride in a circus or whatever it is, and they say you need to be above this height, they're going to discriminate about somebody who's too short to get on that ride. So that is discrimination, because it could be dangerous for that person. So discrimination isn't always a bad thing, but when it comes to the case of education, I actually think it is.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it's vastly different to going on a circus ride, I hope.
But it's still discrimination, though.
Jackie, I think, summed it up for me. If you introduce some kind of positive discrimination, it means, and also what Leo said, there's no point in investing in your kids' education. Our society depends on us caring about our children. And if I choose to have a better education for my kids instead of a better car, surely that's a good thing.
I suppose so. But, I mean, maybe I may have benefited from a level of positive discrimination. I mean, if they do that and it's in my favour, I'm not really going to argue with it. But today we're asking, is positive discrimination bad? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Chris says positive discrimination for one means negative discrimination for another. Rob says any positive discrimination and target setting is pure socialism. Many people crimp and scrimp and save to send a child to private school. Exactly. Not everybody's a rich person doing it. Matthew says discrimination discrimination in itself is a negative term. You cannot change its meaning by putting the word positive before it. And Ron says, Nana, hi Nana, I'm now 77. My wife of over 50 years, until she passed in 2018, sorry to hear that, was of mixed race. My father-in-law was black, and until he passed on in the mid-80s, he was my best mate. Now my wife suffered really bad racism during childhood, but during our married life, we never experienced racism. Please, Nana, what or who has started all this racism stuff again? Do you know what? I would actually put it down to Black Lives Matter.
Absolutely.
Barbara says, believing someone from a working class background needs a leg up is discriminatory in itself. How about this novel idea? Ask a working class person. See, you guys are cleverer than these so-called dons at these universities. Right. It's time now, though, for our quick-fire quiz. It's the part of the show where we test you and my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. But because, of course, tonight is the world-famous Eurovision Song Contest, our quiz today is all about Eurovision. So joining me is former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik and also comedian Leo Kearse. They've both got a buzzer. Leo, could you buzz your buzzer, please? Lovely. And Lembit, your buzzer, please.
Oh, no.
Excellent. Right, so let's do it. You obviously play along at home. Right, here's the first question. How many times has the UK won Eurovision? Is it A, 5 times? Is it B, 3 times? Or C, 7 times? Is that Lembit?
No,
it's Leo. Leo.
Is it B, 3 times?
No.
3 times. Lembit, what's your answer?
5.
Well, bring your buzzer. I can't accept your answer. Can't accept your answer, Lembit. You didn't buzz. The answer is 5 times.
I was right.
Yeah, but you don't
just because I didn't press the button.
Nil point.
Oh, how dare you.
Right.
You're discriminating.
Well, you got it wrong. 5 times. The last time the UK won was in 1997 when the contest was hosted in Dublin. British rock band Katrina, do you remember that Katrina and the Waves, performed that song Love, Shine a Light.
Can you sing it?
Mark Roberts, I can't sing.
I remember
from
that song.
Ireland. The UK has been on quite a long losing streak since then. Do you remember that? Do you think we've got a chance this year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because people don't hate Britain anymore, because we've helped Ukraine so much.
No chance at all.
Is the song bad?
The song's OK, but it's political, and there's no chance.
Right, well, here's question 2. Right, here we go. So how many points did we score last year? Closest wins. Lembit.
None.
1.
You got to press your buzzer, please.
1.
OK.
He doesn't count now because he didn't press his button before his answer.
The answer is actually correct. It's 0.
Yes! History recalls that I am correct.
It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible.
The song was OK.
The song was terrible.
It was
James
political.
scored 0 points. It wasn't political. It was this. Listen, it wasn't discrimination. It was a bad song. I'm sorry, James, but it was terrible. It was almost as bad as that one. Don't play this song on the radio. That one. It was
I used to share a flat with his brother, John Newman.
Well, tell him, James, from Leo. That song was terrible. It was bad.
True.
James actually scored 0 point, embarrassing, last year when he performed his song Embers. Yeah, that went up in flames in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands.
See what you did
the second time that we've scored 0 points in the competition. The first was in 2003 when Liverpool duo, do you remember Gemini? They performed that song Cry Baby in Latvia.
Right.
And they were in tears.
Yeah. That was in Latvia. I've been to the Eurovision Song Contest. You probably don't want to hear my story.
Not really. OK, no, bad. Something bad happened to you there?
No, I went to Tallinn when Estonia won, and I went there and I thought this is going to be pretty kitsch, and then at the end of it, it's so beautiful.
Oh my God, that's really sad. I wish we hadn't heard that.
You could never unsee that.
Right, well, here's question 3. When was the UK's first appearance in the Eurovision Song Contest? Was it A, 1984? Was it B, 1970, or C, You must wait till I finish. I was going to say that, otherwise you will be disqualified, Lembit, from that.
Well, I'm disqualified now, aren't I?
Leo.
Was it 1957?
Let's see if he's correct. Actually, Lembit, what's your answer?
1970.
1957, Leo!
No way!
I hope somebody's tallying up the scores. Right, yes, it was.
It's discriminating against me. It's ridiculous.
It was the second edition of the competition and was hosted in Frankfurt in the west of Germany. The UK also has had 59 consecutive appearances in the grand final of the contest, which is actually a record.
We buy it.
Right, let's see. Let's go to question 4. In 1947, Swedish band ABBA won the contest with their performance of Waterloo. In which city, though, did they perform it? Was it A, London, B, Brighton, or C, Birmingham? I think Lembit just got it.
London.
What was your answer going to be?
I was going to go for London as well, but I'll say Brighton.
No, it's
No, come on, Leo.
The answer is not London.
He's looking at the auto cue. Miss.
Nobody gets
He
points for
cheated.
that. It's just, no, it
He's
was a nil.
disqualified.
You got. Well, listen, this last question is the tiebreaker, so let's go for it. Yes, of course. It was the 19th edition of the contest, hosted at the Brighton Dome. Which, have you got a favourite Advert song, briefly? Advert song?
Dancing Queen.
Yep.
Oh, well, Knowing Me, Knowing You is my favourite.
Yeah, just as well we don't. Right, question 5. True or false? According to a popular betting website, the UK is the third most likely to win this year. Is it true or false?
True.
Leo?
False.
It is true.
No way.
I think the odds of the UK winning this year are 13-2. That puts us in third place behind Sweden, who are 11-2, and Ukraine, who are 1-3. Favourites to
Ukraine
win.
will win.
So who do you think is going to win?
Ukraine.
Yeah, it's going to be Ukraine.
I'm going to vote for them.
Yeah, are Russia in it?
Well, Russia are going to lose, honestly. Well, listen, on today's show, we've been asking, what do you think? Should Sweden and Finland stand up to Putin and join NATO? 79% of you said yes, they should.
Quite right.
And 21% of you said no, they shouldn't. Well, I've got to say a big thank you so much to my fabulous panel, former Liberal Democrat MP Lembit Opik. Thank you so much, Lembit.
My pleasure.
And also comedian Leo Kearse. Thank you, Leo, for joining me today. And as ever, a huge thank you to you at home for taking part. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I'll leave you with some weather and enjoy the fabulous sunshine. Take care. See you at 4. Join me then.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking fine and dry, but the increasing risk of showers moving into southwest England. Let's take a look at the details. Starting off in southwest England, and there'll be a risk of showers here this evening. Some could be heavy, with the risk of some hail and thunder. Southeast England and London will be dry at 7 o'clock this evening, though the risk of showers increases later. Feeling warm and muggy.